So how do you think like a boy becomes a man? Back in the tribe days, they would go away and kill an animal to become a man. But we don't have that in modern day society. How can a guy listening to this, we can't know that he's a man?
Yeah, that's difficult because you're right. We don't have those modern day or the equivalent of what those rituals used to be in the modern day. So you have to create those things. You have to I don't want to say fabricate. That's not the right word, but you do have to craft those rituals for yourself and for the boys, the young boys in your life, specifically my 3 boys, and I coach baseball teams within the community. So you have to put yourself in difficult situations because at the end of the day, what separates me from my boys, for example, is, again, the ability to take accountability and responsibility for my own choices. If I were to look at my boys, for example, they are still boys. They don't have much responsibility. They've got to do some chores and some things around the house. They don't have much accountability. They might get in trouble if they don't get the chores done or walk their dog or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, they don't really have a lot of responsibility, which is why we see grown men, 30, 40 years old, still living in their parents' basement playing video games, not taking any accountability or responsibility for their lives. And these are not men. They're boys still, even though they may be 30 or 40 years old. It's the same reason why a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old boy turns into a man because his father dies or leaves for whatever reason, and now he has to step up and help provide for the family. He now has an obligation to be responsible and accountable to other people, and so he becomes a man sooner. But as far as creating this for yourself, it's about putting yourself in difficult situations. And I always make the distinction that it's not dangerous situations. That's not what we're looking for here. But we're looking for difficult situations. Last year, for example, I competed in a 60-hour endurance event. That was brutal. I mean, it was rough. And there was times that I wanted to give up mentally and physically and emotionally. But I bore down and I made it through it. And because I made it through it, it gave me a new frame of reference for how I wanted to show up and how I'm going to be more fully a man in my life and the people I care about. So if you can find situations, you can find scenarios that are difficult, that push you past your comfort zone, that create a new frame of reference for you to judge all your actions and decisions and behaviors off of, those are the types of things that make you a man quicker and more effectively.
And for those people listening, why is it important to become a man? Why is it important to have that father figure? Why can't we just stay boys or, in between for the rest of our lives? What damage does it do to us in society for us not to develop into men?
Well, so there's 2 angles we could take on this. One is mediocrity. Everybody's has been complacent in their life at some point. Everybody's been comfortable and living this mediocre life. And the reality is that if you can't accept full accountability and full ownership and responsibility for your life, you're always going to live somewhat mediocre. You're never going to go out and you're never going to do the things that you should be doing. The other side of this is if this masculine energy, which does not go away and it continues to develop in boys, is not checked, we run into Lord of the Flies type scenario. Have you read that book, Lord of the Flies?
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, I mean, you run into that, right? And so these boys are running around with this masculine energy, and it's not harnessed. They don't know how to harness that energy to create good in the world, and so they end up doing horrible things. And we see that in society. It's the reason we have gangs. It's the reason we have violence. It's the reason we have drug abuse. It's the reason the prison system in America, anyways, is run rampant with men who grew up without fathers in their life. Is this always the scenario? No, because I grew up without a permanent father figure in my life, but I'm an exception rather than the rule. And I think there's so many boys that are growing up without these fathers, and they're running into criminal activity, they're running into drug addiction and drug problems, and then they're just perpetuating the problem. So this is going to get worse and worse. Violence, drug addiction, domestic abuse is going to continue to get worse until men realize how to step up fully in their homes and be the type of fathers that society needs.
So what do you consider, I mean, I love that answer, absolutely brilliant answer, but what do you think makes a good man? How can we ensure that the next generation start resolving this issue and start, raising young men to be great future role models for others?
Sure. It comes down to leadership. If you look at, I think traditionally what we look at as a parent, and maybe not traditionally, but maybe society would have us believe that a father's job or even a mother's job is to protect our children, right? And so we give participation trophies to every little child that happens to show up to a baseball game. We keep them from anybody getting upset at them, or heaven forbid they become offended or they do something and they actually get in trouble for it, and there's no discipline and guidance and direction. And they get in the real world and they get slaughtered because they've never dealt with real world scenarios. And so I think a parent's job, to your point and your question, is that we as men need to allow our children to fail. We need to allow our children to flounder a little bit, and we need to give our children opportunities to lead within the family, to lead on a hike that they may go on in the afternoon, but to give them opportunities to figure out things on their own and to get banged up and bruised and beat up and realize I didn't die, and so they come back more resilient and tougher. And the more that you can expose your children to hardship and heartache, again, not danger, you want to keep them protected. That is part of your job. But the more that you can expose them to setbacks and to show them the strength they already have within them to overcome those setbacks, the better leaders they are going to be when they get in the position of leadership or they have an opportunity presented to them in work or in their own family or community.